which were tiny torch-bearing likenesses of Mithra himself. Mithra also had a number of animal companions, a snake, a dog, a lion, a scorpion, but not 12 of them. Mithra did perform a number of actions rather typical for any deity worldwide, true or false, and in both his Iranian and Roman incarnations. It must be remembered, however, that some general similarities would normally apply to any religious leader. However, these are not objects that require some theory of dependence. Besides, the mysteries were not practiced until the 1st century AD, and Mithraism reached the height of its popularity around the 3rd and 4th centuries, when it was particularly popular among the soldiers of the Roman Empire. But that rules out the possibility of influence on Christianity. In his book, Image and Value in the Greco-Roman World, Richard Gordon writes that there is no death of Mithras, and thus there is no resurrection of Mithra, nor is there a 3-day burial. Zeitgeist sources Freakin' Gandhi claim that the Mithraic initiates enacted a similar resurrection scene, but their only reference is post-Christian Tertullian's Prescription Against Heretics, chapter 40, which is also quoted in the Zeitgeist Addendum. In context, this in no way proves Zeitgeist's point, because Tertullian was explaining how Mithraic practices, which were introduced into Roman culture after Christianity, copied Christianity. Mithraic practices were not even in existence in the 1st century when Christianity began, but they were beginning to emerge in Tertullian's time and apparently copying Christian and Jewish beliefs. The complete passage reads, "The devil, of course, to whom pertain these wiles which pervert the truth, and who by the mystic rites of his idols vies even with the essential portions of the sacraments of God, he too baptizes some. That is, his own believers and faithful followers he promises the putting away of sins by a layer of his own. And, if my memory still serves me, Mithra there, in the kingdom of Satan, sets his mark on the foreheads of his soldiers, celebrates also the oblation of bread, and introduces an image of a resurrection. Therefore, in the very source cited by Zeitgeist and Freakin' Gandhi, Mithra celebrates and introduces an image of a resurrection, which can hardly be seen as a resurrection of Mithra, or for Mithraic initiates. Additionally, Tertullian's writing is significantly after the New Testament times. Dr. Ronald Nesch affirms, "No claim can be made that Mithras was a dying and rising god. The tide of scholarly opinion has turned dramatically against attempts to make early Christianity dependent on the so-called dying and rising gods of Hellenistic paganism. Any unbiased examination of the evidence shows that such claims must be rejected. Sunday worship only appears in Roman Mithraism, and Acharya S. is apparently assuming that what held true for Roman Mithraism also held true for the Iranian Mithraism, but there is no evidence for this idea. It is therefore unlikely that borrowing occurred, but if there was borrowing, it was the other way around. Though the Bible teaches that Jesus rose from the dead on Sunday, and early Christians considered this the Lord's Day, they not only worshipped him on this day of the week, but every other day as well, as we read in Acts chapter 2, 46 and 47. And the Jews, such as Jesus, worshipped on the Sabbath, or Saturday. In the early 4th century, it was Constantine of the Roman Catholic Church who paganized the meaning of Sunday. His Sunday law of March 7th, AD 321 read, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in the cities rest, and let all workshops be closed." Mithraism could not have influenced the Gospel writers because it was not even known to the Roman world at the time of early Christianity. The Encyclopedia Britannica states, "There is little notice of the Persian god Mithra in the Roman world until the beginning of the 2nd century, but from the year AD 136 onward, there are hundreds of dedicatory inscriptions to Mithra. Roman Mithraism was practically a new creation, wrought by a religious genius who may have lived as late as AD 100. We must assume that the pagan gods which Zeitgeist gives examples for are the ones for which they have the best documentation and evidence. As the viewer has seen, the examples given by Zeitgeist are not impressive. Taken together with all the debunked information, the parallels Zeitgeist presented in no way explains causation for Christianity. Before AD 100, all of the mystery religions were still mostly confined to localities. But after AD 100, they gradually began to attain popularity throughout the Roman Empire. Many writers used the late source material produced in this period after AD 150 to form reconstructions of what they think the cults must have been earlier to their spread in the Roman Empire. All of these sources and authors cited for these claims in the film Zeitgeist are not original primary sources, nor do they cite such primary or original material in their bibliographies. Even the majority of atheists and non-Christian scholars have rejected the idea that Christianity has been borrowed from ancient myths, including the well-respected Sir Edward Evans Pritchard, who wrote, "The evidence for this theory is negligible."
First of all, the birth sequence is completely astrological. The star in the east is Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which, on December 24th, aligns with the three brightest stars in Orion's belt. These three bright stars in Orion's belt are called today what they were called in ancient times, the Three Kings. And the Three Kings and the brightest star, Sirius, all point to the place of the sunrise on December 25th. This is why the Three Kings follow the star in the east, in order to locate the sunrise, the birth of the sun.
Once again, even if you were to label the three stars in Orion's belt the Three Kings, it would be irrelevant to the Bible, as is December 25th irrelevant. Though the Magi, not kings, presented three gifts, nowhere do the Bible writers make an issue of there being three of them in number. Apparently, it was insignificant to the Gospel writers, and so it is to us as well. This entire astrological premise is problematic. Not only does Sirius align with the three stars in Orion's belt 365 days a year, and not only in December, but they are more or less aligned to the sun for almost all of the winter months. There is nothing at all special about December 25th. In fact, it is by December 25th that Orion is almost totally below the horizon. It would be much more accurate of Zeitgeist if this event was said to happen a month or so earlier.
The Virgin Mary is the constellation Virgo, also known as Virgo the Virgin. Virgo in Latin means virgin. Virgo is also referred to as the house of bread, and the representation of Virgo is a virgin holding a sheaf of wheat. This house of bread and its symbol of wheat represents August and September, the time of harvest. In turn, Bethlehem in fact literally translates to house of bread. Bethlehem is thus a reference to the constellation Virgo, a place in the sky, not on earth.
Bethlehem indeed means house of bread. Nevertheless, there is no basis for concluding that Bethlehem was a fictitious place which was fabricated based upon the constellation Virgo in the sky. The existence of Bethlehem is attested by biblical and extra-biblical sources. First, Old Testament authors prior to the 1st century mention Bethlehem. Also, the Jewish historian Josephus mentions Bethlehem as the location where King David was anointed to be future king of Israel. J.B. Hennessy reports of the archaeological evidence demonstrating that Bethlehem was inhabited during the Iron Age and the 1st century. He recorded, "Perhaps most important has been the isolation in 1969 of the Iron Age tell. The limits of the Iron Age occupation, while not entirely clear, appear to be on the flat surface of the slopes immediately beneath the basilica and to the east. The work was carried out by Israel Archaeological Society. Bethlehem appears to have been a major area of occupation from the Paleolithic period." Former astrologer and author of Spellbound, The Paranormal Seduction of Today's Kids, Marcia Montenegro wrote, "You can't just make a story out of names like Virgo, Leo, Taurus, etc. And why doesn't the story begin with Aries? If it did, then Leo comes before Virgo, yet Leo is supposedly Jesus, the Lion of Judah. It seems it would come after Virgo, not before, in a story."
There's another very interesting phenomenon that occurs around December 25th, or the winter solstice. From the summer solstice to the winter solstice, the days become shorter and colder. And from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, the sun appears to move south and get smaller and more scarce. The shortening of the days and the expiration of the crops when approaching the winter solstice symbolize the process of death to the ancients. It was the death of the sun. And by December 22nd, the sun's demise was fully realized.